Hey everybody, and thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to be representing the team that worked on this project and to take you through our journey of designing the ROI tool, or ROI as we are now calling it. So in 2019, UNFPA approached GBL to design this web-based return on investment tool that could be used to convince businesses that they should invest in various health interventions for women workers. And they wanted to focus on the sexual and reproductive health of women workers. GBL was interested in doing this project for quite a few reasons. And some of them are here. The first one was that working with UNFPA aligned with our interest in making a business case for investing in worker health, especially women workers' health, which is something that we were already working on. It also gave us the opportunity to take our research and learnings and to apply it in a way that could create a global impact. And two, it was a unique challenge for us to create an entire tool using just literature reviews, but having designed digital tools in-house in the past, such as Inache, which is a worker voice platform, and Pratibha, a supervisor screening tool. This was very much up our alley and something that our research and design teams at GBL were uniquely positioned to work on. I'd also like to add that the design process largely involved qualitative research applied in a very innovative way, which makes Evolve a great platform to talk about this project. This was pretty much the process, but I'll go into the different phases in detail. So as a first step, GBL's team, research team, conducted a systematic literature review, as Rochak was saying, and this included some research papers, and it also included business case studies that helped us understand and quantify the business impact of women's health and productivity in the workplace. We looked for business outcomes such as absenteeism, worker turnover, and productivity for each type of intervention. And a total of 7 interventions were shortlisted, and these interventions showed a pattern of improved productivity along with reduced absenteeism and turnover, which in turn brought an ROI, or a return on investment. So here you can sort of see how the interventions were mapped to each of the business outcomes. And you can also see some of the interventions that we focused on for the scope of this project, which included women's health interventions, such as when it came to menstrual health, so usage of sanitary napkins, and then also sexual reproductive health training, and peer outreach sessions, life skills training, and also providing sexual reproductive health products at the factory. And these are some interventions that we've already, GBL has been working on with Shahi Exports to explore what the impact is. And this is also something that UNFPA is already working on, which is core to their purpose. So each of these interventions were mapped to business outcomes, and essentially a formula was derived. And this formula could now be used to project what the return on investment would be if a specific company wanted to invest in a specific women's health intervention. And thus the ROI tool was born. And this is a working prototype, but now the next step was to turn this into an approachable and user-friendly web-based tool that businesses would actually want to use. And we had to figure out who the exact users of this tool would be. Would they be somebody in an executive position, or would it be initiated by somebody on the ground who would actually be running these programs? And how would the tool be discovered, considering that it's a web-based tool available on the internet? And would it be used on desktops or phones or tablets? So we took this Google Sheets prototype for a test drive with the various stakeholders that we had identified, and we used qualitative research methodology to interview them on how decisions were made in their factories while they were using the tool, and try to get them to think aloud how the scenario would play out if they were to use this tool in their factories. And these the people that we tested the tool out with are those who work currently or had worked in Shahi Exports organizational development team at various levels. And Mr. Deepak here is one of them. So thanks to Shahi, we were able to test this tool out at a very early stage. We then used the feedback and answers from the interviews to simulate user journeys for different users and create different use case scenarios. And doing this helped us identify what features were required, how the input data should be collected, what data could and could not be collected, because it's rare that we realize that a single person in the organization would have access to all the data at their fingertips. And the other point is that organizations are apprehensive about the information that they put out in a free web-based tool, right? Even if it's hosted on a secure UN server. So challenges came up like how you'd get some numbers as monthly data, some as annual data. Some types of data were not readily available, so they would have to be derived from other data, and our research team was able to work around that. For example, Mr. Deepak was the one who told us that for the textile industry, we should use standard allowed minutes to measure the production target rather than the number of products that were manufactured in a year. And this was new information to us, and we realized that this applied to the textile industry at a global scale. So here I really want to highlight the importance of speaking to your target audience and learning their language. Even in terms of the outputs that this tool could give, different stakeholders wanted different things. And this process helped us design an output solution that could be used at various levels. So whether it was pitching a program to your boss, or just comparing two interventions before deciding what to prioritize. We then collaborated with a software developer to turn the design into something that could be visual and clickable. And then we did our second round of user testing. And here we were able to identify the points at which a user might feel stuck, either because there was not enough information on how to proceed, or in some cases, there may have been an information overload. So we got feedback on how to make visuals more relevant and how to present the ROI information in a clear and digestible format. The users were also now able to clearly imagine what they would do with the data next. And this helped us imagine a few new features. Like we decided that we could have a feature where we could bundle a few interventions to give a more holistic ROI, or being able to download reports in different currencies, because sometimes the person funding the intervention may be based in a different place on the globe than the fact where the factory is located. So just having those features that take into consideration what the business needs. So what you see on the screen right now is the third version of the ROI tool, which had an updated interface, which was a lot more intuitive for the user based on the testing session we had done with the previous version. And at this point, it was all about the text and the language and the communication. And we went back and forth on this a lot because it was so integral to the success of the tool. Federica and her team helped us test out this tool with other businesses in Asia Pacific, and they had further insights on how the language and industry terms could be made a lot more universal. And it was also important how the numbers were presented in order to make a compelling case. We had to take some key decisions, such as the decision not to round off numbers and to show like the entire number, even if it was a really large number, and showing whole numbers instead of percentages. That was pretty much our journey of working on ROIT, and I'm very much looking forward to see how it can be used to convince companies that investing in worker well-being is good for business. Some learnings that stood out to us. So as the first one was that with any app, an online app, we need to make it easy for the user to feed in data. And kind of have a dialogue with the user, because as humans, we really hate filling out forms. And that is something universal. And we don't want businesses to feel like they have to do something extra and have like an additional burden. So this is sort of a before and an after, where in the first case, we actually expected businesses to fill out like pay grade by lowest salary, medium salary, highest salary. And for a number of reasons, businesses are not going to want to do that. So in our after, our research team was able to actually just use these three data points to get all the information that we needed for the algorithm. And then as researchers, there are some data points that we tend to see as sort of back end or rough work, not important to show as the end product, but it's in fact some of these data points that are very important indicators for businesses that the research is working in practice. So, for example, it became very important, as I mentioned earlier, to show the impact on tangible outcomes such as absenteeism and worker turnover, which can be observed on a factory floor on a day-to-day basis. Initially, our tool was focused only on showing productivity, but with feedback from our business stakeholders, we realized the importance of showing absenteeism and turnover as well, as they are key outcomes. And that became an important thing that we presented in the tool. Another example, which you see here on the screen, is that initially we hadn't shown the hours that had been lost during training of a new worker. And that is something that we had taken into consideration, but then it was important for us to add a note saying that. So that's something that we also incorporated, as you can see on the right. Yeah, the last point was about understanding the nitty-gritties of creating a tool for a global audience. So working with an international organization such as UNFPA gave us that exposure to understand what considerations we needed to incorporate to make the tool more inclusive, even in terms of the language that we used, and to be able to pack in the most detail while keeping it simple enough to understand and then be translated into other languages. So what you see on the screen is a classic example, something that we encountered while designing the tool. What does a mobile clinic look like in your country? If you've never, if you're not from this sector and if you don't know what a mobile clinic is, it could be any of these things, right? It could be a clinic on wheels. It could be a clinic on your mobile phone. It could be a person who is a vehicle of mobility transporting a clinic around, like a very portable human doctor. So I think it became very important for us to break that down into its components and then be able to justify the cost of what it takes to have a mobile clinic in that sense in order to carry out the intervention. Those were the learnings summed up from our journey of working on this tool. And personally, I had an amazing time working with my colleagues in research and design to make this happen. And we all share the sentiment that there's great joy in turning a simple formula into a tool and then having a global audience use it, hoping that it'll be a catalyst for social change on the shop floor. Thank you. And if you're curious to see, catch a glimpse of how the tool eventually turned out, we have a video for you, post which Federica will talk about UNFPA's role in the tool development.
Dashboard. By clicking Start New Projection, you will be able to begin using the ROI calculator. You will be able to 1. ROI calculations. Each of these programs can be selected individually, or in some cases, you'll see the option to bundle programs together, maximizing the impact of the program's implementation. 2. Start filling in details about your own company or factory. The tool will ask you some baseline information about your factory or company, such as, for example, the number of employees, how many of them are women, and also some baseline data about the rates of absenteeism, turnover, and productivity in your company. You can go back any time to your projection to input these different pieces of baseline information. You will also have the option to download a mega checklist in Excel, where all these fields can be filled in before returning to the ROI tool calculator. In this step of the tool, you'll also be able to select your preferred currency to perform the calculations. Some of the key values will also be presented in US dollars in the final report. This information you provide is securely stored on the website and is used to calculate the impact of the different programs on the business variables and ROI. In the next step, you will be able to review some of the costs related to the provision of these programs in your company. The costs provided by default by the tool can be updated if you have different values or information. After having inputted all the required information in the calculator's fields, the ROI tool will calculate the potential impact of your selected programs on your company's absenteeism, turnover, and productivity. You will also be able to see the estimated ROI of your selected programs based on the savings achieved through the program's implementation versus the costs of service provision. To download the results of your projection, you can click Export Report and save your file on your device. The saved projections will remain available on your personal workspace, and at any time, you can log into your profile to review existing projections or create new ones for comparison. If you have any questions, please refer to the frequently asked questions section of this website. Invest in her. Empower women workers. Boost your business. Start your projection today.